Hello and welcome to Ditch Witch Diaries. We are so happy you have joined us, and if you like our channel, please subscribe. This week we are still going through our just whatever herbs we want, whatever herbs or plants move us for that day. And so, first of all, we're just going to turn it over to Raven. Go right ahead.
All right. So we are doing Irish moss today.
Ooh.
Um, so firstly, Irish moss is not a moss. Irish moss, not a moss. It's an algae, it's seaweed. Why it's called moss, I don't know, actually. I could not find anything on why it's called Irish moss, but there we have it.
Is it Irish?
It is Irish.
That's good.
Well, at least
At least half of the name is accurate.
Because okay, so I grew up in Southern Orange County, and there's this place in Southern Orange County called Lake Forest, and both the lake and the forest are fake. Like there's no real lake. It was
there's no
man-made,
lake
and the
or forest in
yeah, the
Lake
forest,
Forest.
yeah, the forest is like a eucalyptus forest that was humanly planted. So there's no real lake and there's
Oh
no real
God.
forest. It's just garbage. So luckily,
Nice.
luckily for you, it's only half of that.
Yeah.
It is Irish, yeah.
Nice.
Um, so the botanical Latin name is Chondrus Crispus. The parts used is the thallus. If you're not familiar, the thallus is basically the whole part. It's like everything. When we're talking about seaweed thallus, it's everything from roots all the way to tip. So folk names, there's quite a few. Carrageen moss, curly moss, gristle moss, curly gristle moss, pearly gristle moss, Dorset weed, jelly moss, rock moss, sea moss, which again, all of these names come like have moss are misleading because there's tons of different types of sea moss, and seaweed is not a sea moss. So, but
It's not a
people
sea
still
moss.
refer to it as sea moss, sea pearl moss, and white rack.
Nice.
So, lots of misleading stuff, but I do want to say I didn't find any folklore on it at all. We're going to talk about a lot of like uses and stuff, but I couldn't find any like stories that come from it.
Hmm.
So yeah, weird. I did find like general stories about stories about and folklore about general seaweed, but not specifically Irish moss, and also general folklore about moss. But again, it's not moss, so no folklore. But we are gonna talk about uses and stuff.
Nice.
So it grows very, very, very abundantly, as you can see here. It grows abundantly on like the rocky coastline of the Atlantic, including like the British Isles, Northern America, some of Europe. But we especially find it very plentiful on Ireland's coastlines. So even though we find it everywhere, we find it the most concentrated in like and around Ireland. So hence Irish moss or seaweed. So it's often this deep, like burgundy wine merlot red or like a purpley color, but the color can range from like pale yellow to like a light greeny purple, all the way to like very, very dark red, almost black. So we have a really wide variety. And oftentimes there's not really anything specific. Like the concentration of iodine fluctuates, which makes it so red. But it doesn't, a lot of people seem to think that it changes color as it gets older. So maybe it starts out light green and then gets darker as it gets older, but that's not true. Even like these baby plants can still be very dark. Uh, there we go. So it does like to grow on rocks and boulders, and it likes to grow on rocks where it's underwater at high tide, but out of the water at low tides. So I want to quickly talk about Carrageenan, I think is how you say that.
Hmm.
But is that how you say it? Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So It comes from Irish moss, but it's like processed, or yeah, it's processed Irish moss. So typically you would take Irish moss or other seaweed, but it is mostly Irish moss. And you basically submerge it into this potassium hydroxide like liquid. You and then you take it out of that, and then you soak it in fresh water, and then that process takes out this like alkali that is then dried and ground into flour. And then that ground flour works like gelatin. It's basically like a plant based form of gelatin. It is really gelatinous, really, really gelatinous. And it's used in a ton of, if you've ever heard seaweed in your toothpaste. My dad used to say that all the time for some reason. It's true. This is what they're talking about. So it's in ice cream, it's in yogurt, it's in all different types of like flavored milk products, it's even in frozen pizza. It's used in all kinds of stuff as like a binder. And it has been used very popularly for this reason for like 50 years. So because this is one of the most, if not the most common ways that people use Irish moss, oftentimes people will just say Carrageenan when they are talking about Irish moss, but technically they're separate. Technically, it's like processed Irish moss. So continuing on that like Carrageenan like thing real quick, just so that we're aware, before we use this, before we discovered that Irish moss could be processed to become like very gelatinous, we used to use, I don't know, isinglass, I think is how you say that, which is basically the
Yeah.
swim bladders of fish. And so if you're not aware, fish have like two what they call bladders, actually a urinary bladder, which is a true bladder. But then we also have the swim bladder, which is basically filled with gas, and it helps them stay like buoyant and stuff. Um, and so that used to be the most common way that we would use like thicken, like that's used to be the most common thickening agent that we would use. And it's still used somewhat today, but it's a little bit more rare. Now we usually use the Irish moss, like the processed Irish moss, because it's like way cheaper and easier to harvest.
So there was a song that is like an old-timey song, like a Broadway musical song that talked about isinglass windows that you could roll right down in case there's a change in the weather.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Like,
Interesting.
and anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the only way I
That's
know
such
about
a
isinglass is isinglass windows.
interesting. Yeah, it's a weird like term. I wonder why, like how that term came about from swim bladders, but okay. So typically, even though that's how a lot of people use the Irish moss now once it's harvested, typically and like historically, if you're just some like if you're not a company who's trying to create this binder or this gelatinous thing, usually you would just harvest it, you would pick it off the rocks, and then you would just take it up higher on the rocks so that it doesn't get wet, and then you leave it out to dry. And then you have to wash it really, really well, because a lot of little tiny sea critters love to like make their home in the Irish moss. So when you get it, if you get it like fresh, you need to make sure that you are washing it really, really well. There's even like little sea snails, so there'll be like shells and stuff in there. So you lay it out to dry, you wash it, lay it out to dry, bring it home, and then you like wash it again, and then you boil it, and then you can add it to anything. It's commonly added to like flans, tonics, beer, and then blanchmange, which is like a very light cream dessert, especially served in Ireland. Um, and you can get like big old bags of Irish moss like in Ireland stores for apparently pretty cheap, and it's like a common thing that people use again for even either to use it as like a binder or to like thicken something up.
So just for clarification purposes, I will
Yeah.
tell you, it's not isinglass windows, it's isinglass curtains you can roll right down in case there's a change in the weather.
Oh,
And
Nice.
it's from the musical Oklahoma, and the song is The Surrey with the Fringe on Top,
okay.
1943. So
Okay.
there you go.
I'm not very good at Rogers and
Interesting.
Hammerstein.
I do love them.
I need to rewatch them. I don't have them in my head.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, so Yeah, I can't match the name with the thing, but I
Totally.
can like
Yeah.
some sort of
It
musical
pops
Yeah, I was
up
stuff.
like,
for
oh,
I
you.
get like
Oklahoma. Dang it, I
I,
don't know that one. I know Surrey with the fringe on top, but I don't know the whole song.
Uh, that's
anyway.
funny. And I am not a musical person.
No, no, you wouldn't know it at all. You
I'm
would have
not.
no clue what we were talking about the whole time.
I
Exactly.
don't.
Especially since it's from 1943, so I'm like
Oh,
eight
I know. Rogers and
Oh,
Hammersteins are a million years
jeez.
old. It's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. So this is pretty much the most like far back we go. Again, it's not folklore, but historically, Irish moss was used to fight off nutritional deficiencies in the 1800s during the Irish Potato Famine, where it was really hard to get any food, but especially nutritionally dense food. And so the seaweed was added to a lot of stuff, but most commonly it was added to like milk, and then they would put sugar and spices, especially like cinnamon. And then people would, it would like sit, get all thick and nice, and then people would drink it. It's still used today, and pretty much all places of Ireland and the Caribbean. And then as Irish immigrants left the famine, or fled the famine and came to the US, then we started to see it being used here. And we have like this, or we had, hold on, let me move our little video screen here. There we go. So then we had seaweed, the first seaweed farming like production in Massachusetts, which was led by, the Irish. So it didn't really pick up a lot of traction. Not a lot of people who weren't from Ireland used uh, Irish moss until during World War II. Agar was no longer readily available. It became pretty scarce, which was typically like the binder and the it like used as a binder and like created this gelatinous stuff. So when it was no longer available or hard to find, then people turned to the Irish moss, and then we found out that it was a great substitute. I don't know why, but I love this picture of
Me too. I'm drawn to it
I
as
want to like
well.
rub it on my face.
I know. I
Yes,
want to touch
you
it
can
so
see
bad.
the
I'm
you can
like,
see the texture of the moss, but
you
not moss.
yeah, you
And
can. Yeah, like the like especially right here. And it still looks like moist a little. I don't know.
yes,
It just looks nice.
looks
It
like it
looks
would be like sticky, like one of those sticky hands
it
kind of.
yeah.
does. It
Oh
does. It
yeah.
looks
Like
like
the
you could like
sticky.
slap it.
Yeah. I
I
used to
love
Slap
it.
people
obsess with
around with it.
those.
Whack, whack.
Somebody, I don't think that I put this in my slides, but somebody online had said that Irish moss, dried Irish moss smells like the garden section at Home Depot. And I don't
Mm.
get that at all, but I thought that that was
Oh,
interesting.
that's interesting. That's super interesting.
Yeah. I know. I read it and I like stuck my nose in my jar and I was like,
Now
no, it
let
just
me
smells like the
see.
beach to me. It just smells like
No,
seaweed.
that
Okay.
place smells like fertilizer.
Yeah, or
I can see
like
that.
some aisles I think smell like some sort of like the vitamins that you add. Like I feel like there's like this
Mm,
really like earthy vitamin smell in some of them that's like
Yeah.
mm,
I used to love
yeah.
that smell when I was a kid. Like it
Mm.
smelled like my
Yeah.
dad. It reminded me of my dad because he loved to
Yeah.
garden. I
Mm.
loved that smell.
I feel like it just smells like petrichor, like wet dirt,
Mm.
Mm.
but I do enjoy that smell.
Mhm.
Okay. So we don't really know where the name Carrageenan came from, but some people say that it comes from this place in Ireland where we find a lot. Again, Irish moss is found everywhere in Ireland, but there's this area that's like really heavily concentrated. And so some people say that it's named after that. And then that comes from the Irish word, I don't know how to say it,
Yeah.
Carrageen, meaning Little Rock. And so I had to like Google this, but this is Mooncoin is like in County Kilkenny, which I've been to and I love that
Mm.
area. So some people say the name comes from that. Some people say that it comes from the Gaelic word Carrageen, which translates to an herb, just like general herb.
Mm.
And then some people say it comes from the Greek word chondrus, meaning cartilage because of like the gelatinousness
Mm.
of it. So we don't really know. Who knows? But maybe all of them combined of it a little bit. And then the Japanese call it Tsunomata. And in Japan is the only place in the world that commercially grows it in tanks. So,
Hmm.
like, homegrown seaweed, basically, which is interesting to me that because it's used so often and in so much stuff, it's unusual that not more people or not more like companies grow it like commercially. But hey, maybe there's just so much of it that we don't need to like create tanks and stuff for it. So oftentimes we will again wash it and then you can soak it in water for 20 minutes. And then after that, you take them out of the water and then you put them in milk. Oftentimes when you're looking at like recipes for this, oftentimes it's in milk, either cow or goat or coconut. And then you can so you're letting it like sit in this milk and then you put honey and cinnamon and pepper. Interesting. And then you put that on low and let it simmer for 5 minutes. And then you let it cool off and it turns into pudding. It looks like this basically.
It looks beautiful.
Doesn't it look so good?
Yes.
Looks like a little dessert.
I have not. It does like a beautiful little. Um, I have not anything with it. So I haven't tried to use Irish moss in any recipes or anything. So I don't know what it tastes like. I've like tasted it, but I haven't cooked with it or anything. But most places online says that it doesn't really have a taste. You would think that it has like a very briny kind of like sea taste, but most people say it doesn't really taste like that. It does if you just put it on your tongue dry. I can tell you that from experience. But I don't know about like cooking it in milk. It's supposed to not really taste seaweedy. It's also been used historically throughout Ireland to supplement horses, cattle, pigs, and then pretty much any other domesticated animals. So they would add this into their feed. And then they've also used it as mattress stuffing and then also to help thicken up inks.
Interesting.
Yeah, lots of usages. Okay, so medicinally, once again, I have our little disclaimer up here. We're not doctors. Hopefully, everybody's aware of that by now. We're not physicians. It is anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antiviral, demulcent, emollient, hypoglycemic, hypolipidemic, nutritive, a mild laxative, expectorant, vulnerary, and then kidney and bladder tonic. So lots of good uses for it. Now, this is something true of seaweeds in general. Seaweeds are really, really good about dissolving vitamins and minerals in themselves. So they take all of these vitamins and minerals from the ocean and they just like take it into themselves. And so any type of seaweed is going to be really high in vitamins and minerals. When we're talking about Irish moss specifically, it's really, really high in calcium and iron, potassium. And the calcium in the seaweed is more bioavailable than milk, which is problematic. I'm not going to get on my soapbox here, but
You should. I
as
think you
I
should.
Yeah,
I
get
like your
milk is
soapbox.
soapbox
not
it
good.
up.
Soapbox.
Okay,
Here's. I'm kicking it towards you.
Exactly. Stand on up, climb on up, baby.
I
there's
agree. So go.
this there's this concept in research called the milk myth, and they typically spell it MYLK. The milk myth is this concept that says like milk is good for your bones, and it's not. It's really, really bad for you. There's been I talk about this in class. There's been hundreds of studies that show that the more animal milk that you consume, especially cow milk, but also goat milk, the more animal milk that you consume, the significantly higher risk it puts you at for osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and broken bones,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're a woman over 40. And this is true if you are drinking anything more than half a glass of milk every other day. It is really bad because milk, animal milk, makes your body, it's very acidic. It makes your body very acidic. And so, in order for your body to combat this acidity, it leaches milk from your bones. So, milk takes calcium, or I said leaches milk from your bones, it leaches calcium from your bones. So, you drink this milk, your body is like more acidic than it should be in order for bones to neutralize the milk, or the milk, the acid from the milk. So drinking milk, I mean, every to each their own. I don't really care. You could drink a gallon of milk a day if you want. But just so you know, if you're interested in this, check it out. There are tons and tons of studies done on this. It is like significantly, like people a glass of milk every other day, up to, I think it's like 2 glasses of milk, are like 4 times more likely to get bone fractures. And if you drink more than 2 glasses, you up to like 10.
Uh-oh, you're cutting out, baby.
You're
Oh, oh,
what is going on?
I
totally cutting
know.
out.
Totally cutting out.
So annoying.
I know
And
because
you were
I
like
can tell you
wrapping,
I'm
you were like
implicated.
getting to your
I don't
like
know why. It shows I have full bars. It shows my service is like perfect.
That is so weird.
It's so annoying.
Well, I can tell you that I'm implicated in this because so immediately I feel like that's an interesting thing because I have been having milk every day for a while and I think that because of the acidity, maybe that's why my stomach hurts all the time.
very
Gee,
possibly.
I
It's
know.
really tough on your gut. Milk is not
Gee.
very good. It's
You're
not
like
intended for
totally,
human
Ah,
people.
no more milk. I gotta change my
yeah,
morning routine. Maybe back to oatmeal.
yeah. It's not good. You want, like, it really, like, I mean,
You can try oat milk.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's like
I don't know if I
the
cut out
best
again
substitute.
already. But the reason why we think like milk is good for your bones is because of the food pyramid that came out in the
The
80s. And the
the milk
food
industry.
pyramid was funded by the milk and meat industry. And so
Mm-hmm,
we've known for a long time that milk is not good for you. But
mm-hmm.
because the meat industry is like this powerhouse of the freaking US, it's like it just obliterates everything. So it's really bad. So yeah, drinking more than a half a cup of milk every other day
Mm-hmm.
makes you 4 times, I don't know if you got those stats or if I cut out, but 4 times more likely to have bone fractures and broken bones. And if you drink more than 2 glasses every other day, you're almost 10 times more likely to have bone
I'm
fractures.
fucked.
It
I'm
is,
fucked. I'm drinking
yeah.
so much milk. I'm so fucked. I've got to
No,
cut it
you if
off.
you just stop, you know what? It'll stop. You just
Yeah,
stop doing it.
your body will, it corrects
Okay.
itself
I'm
because
And then
done.
again, if you switch to the
yeah.
oat milk, think about what oats do for your bones.
Yes. Okay. Oats
Yeah.
are okay.
Yeah.
Oat milk
So
is
good.
back.
Yeah. Really. And you, like I said, if you like are really craving like cow milk or something, that's fine. Just try not to drink more than like half a
Yeah, just
glass,
limit
just get
it.
your fix. And then, yeah, I mean, and milk is in, I mean, as a vegan, milk
Right.
is in like freaking everything. And so even if like you're still going to get it from other foods and stuff, you're still going to have slightly more a slight problem, but yeah, it's not like once you stop drinking such excess milk, then the calcium stops getting leached from your bones. It's like automatically because it's every time you drink it, your body needs the calcium. You drink it, your body needs the calcium. So if you just drink less, then your body will stop using that calcium. But
Disturbing.
yeah, for anybody who's interested, I think again, most studies call it milk MYLK, but you can like milk myth, like Google Scholar milk myth, and there are tons of studies. I talk about this. I spend like almost half a class talking about this in my classes.
Yeah, that whole like, yeah, it helps you build strong bones thing. It's
Such BS.
so
Such
disgusting
BS.
every
Yeah.
time.
Terrible. Yeah. So, anyways, Irish moss, really, really good, high in calcium. So, really good for that. It's also high in levels of magnesium, manganese, copper, all kinds of vitamins and minerals. Really, really good for you. It's also one of the very, very few non-animal sources of polyunsaturated fatty acids, which, if you're familiar with the polyunsats, it's good for your brain and your heart, but especially your brain. So it's good. I think flax oil is really high, if I remember right, in polyunsaturated, but it's pretty hard to find foods that are high in these. So Irish moss is good. And then it also has high protein for like how thin and like flimsy it is. Usually we hear protein, like protein brings about images of like hardiness, right? Like like chicken or like steak or like a block of tofu, like hearty, thick foods, but it's pretty high in protein for how lightweight it is. So it varies between 12 and 20%, but it's about 15% protein. So it's good. And especially because of all of these other things it's high in, it's just good to include this in your diet, which is why it was used during the Irish potato famine, because it's high in all of these things. It also contains a lot of iodine, 300 micrograms of iodine, which is a little bit less than like the green seaweeds. Seaweed in general, really high in iodine. Green seaweed tends to be higher than red, which is interesting. But Irish moss, it has the highest iodine content of the red seaweed. And then it's also really good for fiber. Um, this is what if you are just using it for like the gelatinous stuff. So if you like boil it and then you let it sit with no milk or anything, this is what it looks like. It's this really pretty, like pale purple color. And so a lot of doctors in Ireland prescribe like Irish moss jelly or broth for a long time, since the 1800s, to treat a variety of diseases, sore throats, coughs, anything respiratory, ulcers, intestinal stuff. It's really good because again, it's like yeah, I can't say that. Mucilaginous.
Mucilaginous.
There you go. Mucilaginous. There we go.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you. There's another one there's another word I can't say. I can't say. I've been working on this for years and I still can't say it. I can't say the word that's like hierarchy but ends in AL, like
Hierarchical.
yeah, I can't say that. I cannot say that. I've tried for years to perfect it, say it very slowly, and I cannot.
Hierarchy. Yeah. Okay.
Higher, which is so weird because I can say hierarchy, but whatever. Anyways, um,
Hierarchical.
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 It's so weird. It's really good for an expectorant, again, because it's good for like the mucous membranes. It loosens the congestion. So it's really good if you are congested, if you have like cold or flu. It's good for cough. If you have excess phlegm in you, it's good to help get that up. And then these are some lab studies. So lab studies show that it inhibits a lot of viruses, including HPV and genital warts. Again, not doctors, okay? But this is based on research that's out there. If it's used as a nasal spray, it's good to help combat coronaviruses. Now, hopefully we're all kind of aware of this, but if you're not, COVID-19 is not the only coronavirus, right? Like there are tons of coronaviruses out there. That's why we specify it COVID-19.
Mhm.
But it's good to help with any coronavirus, but this includes like COVID-19. It's also, so it says that it traps like particles within itself because it's like gelatinous and like gummy. It traps those like viruses and bugs in there. And so it keeps them separate. It doesn't let your body like get to them, basically. We also see that it helps stop the metastasis of cancer cells, so anti-cancer. And then we also see that it's really good for people who need help balancing. Sorry, I'm moving my video again. Balancing their immune system. Like if people have lower immune systems or compromised immune systems, it's supposed to help like bring it back up. A lot of this stuff I got from this website, Learning Herbs, which is good because they also give their sources. I just didn't want to like add all of the sources, but if you're interested in looking at this, go to that website and they have all of their sources listed. It gives you like links to all of the research articles and stuff. So it's also used in skincare because it's like creates almost like this gel. So it's used in cosmetics again to help with like binding and like the yeah, kind of like gelatinous, think like primers, like makeup primers and stuff. It's also used in sunscreen, but it has anti-aging components. And so a lot of people create like the gel and then they'll mix it in with their moisturizer. They just like mix it in and then put it in a new jar because it's like really good for that too. Okay, so magically, sign is Pisces, element is water. I didn't find anything for a tarot card, and the planet is Moon and Jupiter. Um, the uses are limited that I found online. I'll tell you about my usage for it next, but typically I people online seem to use it for water magic and then money, which they say a money, but I don't like to use things. I don't think things are used for money specifically. I call it abundance. And which makes sense because look at it. Look at how
Yeah.
abundant it is. So
Yeah.
it is definitely an abundance herb and then also an aphrodisiac.
And take note, this is another herb that is not a spice trade herb that you can substitute for your
Yes.
Yes, an
money.
abundance herb that isn't. Yes.
Yeah, that
Yes.
isn't tainted
Beautiful.
by
Yeah. You don't
the
have to use
taint.
clove and cinnamon all the time for like, yeah.
Exactly.
We've talked about that before. If you have not watched that video, go watch it because not good energy that you're getting from that stuff when you're using it for money. To
And
be specific.
especially if you are of the Celtic or Irish or use that kind of magic, like this is
Yeah.
definitely much more up your alley to use. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you
Yeah,
turn to like
100%.
this? Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
true. That's definitely true.
So I did find there was like this little biography of this like family who had stayed in Ireland. One person obviously had written, it was like part autobiography, part biography, but the person was talking about how when the water would recede, they would go out and collect all these tufts of the seaweed, the algae. They would spread it on the rocks to dry, as we mentioned, and then they would use it for like medicinal jelly and then also for the aphrodisiac property. So that's where that concept of like aphrodisiac comes from. And
Nice.
then he was saying that a lot of the women in Ireland would boil it. And so, like, they would
Mm.
boil it and then make like a cream or something for dessert and then give that to their husband and then go have some fun after dinner, you know? So personally for me, that's pretty much all that I found. It's mostly like luck and money. Me personally, this is my go-to water herb. Like in all of my workings, I bring in the elements in all of my workings. And usually I'll use like actual water to represent water, but if I want to use herbs to represent all the elements, this is my water herb. This is like my go-to water herb. I also use it for anything, any working revolving around soothing or nurturing because it's
Mm.
very soothing, it's very soft, it's
Emollient.
very nurturing. Yeah, right. Emollient, true emollient. It's very nurturing. People survived off of it when they couldn't find other food. So anytime I need to do like self-love, I might bring this in because it's very nurturing to myself. And then also again, abundance because we see it's very clearly like an abundance herb. So that's what I personally use it for. A very like soothing, nurturing, any type of beauty magic I'll bring in because it's anti-aging. So all of that kind of stuff. That's what I use it for.
Nice.
And that's it.
Yay.
This is such a raven
Yeah.
herb.
I know. It's perfect for you. That was perfect for you. Such water, water, water. Just like
Yeah.
Water, water,
Water.
water, nurture, nurture,
Yeah. Water
nurture.
Island. Water Island. Water
Anti
Island.
milk, anti milk.
exactly.
Yeah. Anti milk. Yeah.
And
Oh,
well, thank you
oh.
so much for joining us, and we will see you at the next Ditch Witch Diaries.